Troy Aikman took us back to 2016 by reigniting a debate about Tony Romo and Dak Prescott by dropping a powerful quote. We'll get into that tonight on A to Z Sports Dallas Primetime. Loaded show. We also have a lot of draft content. We're going to get into the team's needs. We're going to get into what a former Cowboy scout is saying about round 2 wide receivers, because it gives us the idea of what the Cowboys are looking for. And finally, we'll get into a discussion that it is time to have. Should the Cowboys draft a wide receiver, and how could that look like in this week, NFL Draft Week? Let's get to it, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining me. Here we go. What is up, everybody, and welcome into A to Z Sports Dallas Primetime. I am your host, Mauricio Rodriguez, streaming with you live every Sunday through Thursday night at 8 p.m. Central here on Dallas On Demand Sports Talk Network, with a lot more content coming your way. Make sure that you check out a2zsports.com/Dallas. And as always, remember that Primetime is brought to you by our friends over at FreemanMazda.net. We will talk more about them and the ride of the week in a few moments here on the show. But before we do any of that, though, let's get into what Troy Aikman had to say this weekend, because he stirred the pot out of nowhere. Now, it is draft week. We'll get into plenty of draft content tonight, but I wanted to open up the show with this because I had some fun writing about it on Saturday. I thought that it was a fun quote and one that was kind of nostalgic as well, because you might have forgotten this. You might have moved on to greener pastures, but there was a time in Cowboys lore that you could not get through one full minute of conversation about the Dallas football Cowboys without falling into the, should Tony Romo start when he comes back, or should this be Dak Prescott's team? You might remember that time back in 2016. I remember being there at AT&T Stadium for the Halloween night game between the Cowboys and the Eagles. And I remember walking out of the stadium through the tunnels and kind of yelling with everybody and chanting, "Eagles suck," because that was the comeback win in which Dak Prescott finds Jason Witten in the end zone. And I remember just like every fan, they didn't know each other. Everyone was talking about, should this be Dak's team? Should this be Romo's team? And anyways, just for fun, I wanted to, touch on that quote from Troy Aikman in case you missed it. Here is what he had to say in a charity event for Dak this weekend. Roger Staubach, per David Moore from the Dallas Morning News, said the following: Dak has never cowered to the expectations of winning the Super Bowl. Okay, so far so good. Some praise for Dak Prescott, well-deserved praise. And then he said, he is the only one I've heard since I have played that is really adamant about that being the standard for a Cowboys quarterback. Let me read it again because you might have missed it. He's the only one I've heard since I have played. Since I have played. Who else has played between Troy Aikman and Dak Prescott? Can anybody think of anyone? Oh, right. Tony Romo. So my question from me to you guys before we move on to draft content is the following: fair or foul? Let me know in the chat. What do you think? I'm going to give you my answer as well here. But was Troy Aikman's comment fair or foul? Let me know in the chat. While you do that, let me talk to you about our friends who are making this show possible for all of us tonight. FreemanMazda.net. Because as always, you guys know they make this show possible. We're talking about a Freeman Mazda dealership over at Irving, Texas, but also about the website. Remember, you can browse through their wide range of new and used vehicles, as well as pictures of every car, features of every vehicle, A-plus customer service. And around this time here on Prime Time, it is time for us to discuss the ride of the week. In this case, it is a 2023 Mazda CX-30 2.5S preferred all-wheel drive. Let me talk to you about this vehicle It starts at $29,820. It's got Apple CarPlay / Android Auto, rain sensing wipers, adaptive cruise control, blind spot monitor for your comfort, and a miles per gallon capacity of 26 in the city. That goes up to 33 when you are in the highway. Make sure you check out the ride of the week over at freemanmazda.net. Shout out to them for making the show possible on this week more than any other week, the NFL Draft Week. We're excited about it. We'll move on to that in a few moments here. But before we do that, what do you think? Fair or foul? Let's see what you guys have to say. Shout out to everyone in the chat, by the way. I had not said hi. Fair, says Katharina. Frederick says 100% fair. Mark Aaron goes with fair. What about Quincy, though? Bruce got the toxic use, says fair as well. Katharina talking about, voting for Romo, though. Just wrong, says Gregory. Who else is out here saying fair or foul? Let's see what you guys have to say. Romo said his life is good without winning a Super Bowl, says manage everything. Gilbert also goes with fair. Hey, listen, I love that, looking back at that debate and thinking about the fun times that we had talking Romo versus Dak. And we will save the question of who was the best quarterback for another day. I think that is the mature thing to do here. But I wrote about this, and I'm going with fair for my answer just because Aikman's quote kind of centers around leadership. And I'm going to say this. As much as I liked watching Tony Romo's career and as much as I think he's underrated in his career as a Cowboy quarterback, I do think Prescott beats him easily in terms of leadership skills and just being that guy in the locker room. I do think Prescott has him beat right there. We can talk about, where both rank in Cowboys history another day. Just talking about leadership skills, Prescott is widely acknowledged as one of the best leaders in the NFL. Just won Walter Payton Man of the Year. Has been followed by, his teammates, and they'll go to war any time of the day for him. So yeah, I do think it's fair what Troy Aikman said, and maybe Romo had that kind of infamous attitude sometimes, in which more than one insider has already said that Romo didn't show up when he was hurt in 2016. So I'm going fair. Clemente says leadership got Dak one and done. Simple facts, says Clemente. I'm not sure I got that one, though. Leadership got Dak one and done. Simple facts. Romo and Dak bad plays at the wrong time, says Mark Aaron. Romo was smart, though, says Joey Bella. And I agree with that. I do, definitely do. So anyways, by the way, thank you for being here. Do me a favor and hit the like button. Share the stream if you're watching on Facebook, YouTube, or Twitter. Let your friends know about the show. There's about 70 of us combining YouTube and Facebook right now, and we are at like 10 likes. We need to take that number up. We need to bring that number up. So do me a favor and hit the thumbs up. It helps me put this show in front of more and more Cowboys fans. It is draft week. Well, almost draft week. It is Sunday night, so we can treat it as such. But, tomorrow night, we might have a guest around these parts. We're going to get a draft analyst in here working on getting an interview that I want to get for draft week that I think would be pretty insightful and interesting for all of us. I'll let you know what happens on that front later in the week, I hope. And of course, there's just going to be a ton of draft content for y'all on this channel. Also, make sure you check out Skywalker Steele's morning show as always. And now we can get into the draft. One thing that I wanted to get into was the top needs of the team. And then we'll move on to a former Cowboy scout listing what he believes will be the board for the Cowboys in terms of wide receivers for round 2. And then we'll get into the conversation of potentially drafting a kicker. My question from me to you to open things up with the needs is, what is the biggest need for the Cowboys heading into the 2023 NFL draft. Now, granted, this doesn't necessarily mean what should the Cowboys pick in the first round, because it's also about who's the best player available. It's also about a positional value and all of that. But right now, what would you say is the biggest need for the Dallas Cowboys heading into the week? Left guard, says Mark Aaron. John and Vinny and Rex all kind of agree. Vinny says O-line. Rex Morgan also says left guard. John had said offensive line too. So right now, majority answer offensive line. And I think if we get more specific, people are going with interior offensive line. And if we're going to get even more specific, left guard. Robert agrees. Katharina agrees. Paul agrees. Joey Vela as well. Gregory goes defensive tackle / left guard. I ranked the needs for the Cowboys and I divided them in 3 tiers. Let's look at them right now. Primary needs for the Cowboys. Let me change the slide real quickly. I've got interior offensive line as the main one. And then I have 2 other primary needs. I'm going with tight end. I might be higher on the tight end need than most. And then I'm going with interior defensive line, right? So where do you land? And plenty of people are going with, plenty of people are going with offensive line so far. I'm going with tight end too. And here's the deal. I know Peyton Hendershot, Jake Ferguson, pretty exciting players, had impressive rookie seasons, and Jake Ferguson showed us what he can do after the catch, right? At times, he was even compared to guys like Travis Kelce because of what he was doing with the ball on his hands. It was pretty impressive. And yet, those 2 combined had 30 catches and 277 yards. I cannot treat that position as, it's going to be a smooth transition from a guy who had over 800 receiving yards 2 years ago and then another productive season, even though he was hurt. It's not as smooth as it seems. So I cannot say that, the Cowboys are good on that front. I cannot act like Hendershot and Ferguson are surefire bets. Not to mention that the Cowboys want to run 12 personnel sometimes. They might want to run 13 and 14 personnel. Sure, maybe that was kind of a Kellen Moore thing when he was running the offense. But if you're Dallas, why wouldn't you keep running those kind of packages in the red zone when you already have the know-how? When it worked so well for you just a season ago in those scoring opportunity situations. So I do think the Cowboys need a tight end. I do think, and this is extra, but that the first round might benefit them in the sense that there is likely to be one of their top tight ends with a 26th overall pick. Even Michael Mayer from Notre Dame could be in there. And allegedly, he's a guy the Cowboys won't pass on. Dane Brugler said that on his mock draft. Matt Miller had his today, and he quoted a rival scout as saying that there is no way in hell that Jerry Jones passes on Michael Mayer. So we know that Michael Mayer is not, we know that Jerry Jones is not making the pick, but we know that the Cowboys more than likely love Michael Mayer. And I say that because he's been linked to the Cowboys by many top insiders. Mel Kiper also had him on his mock going to the Cowboys. I do think, ladies and gentlemen, that if Mayer is there, he's almost surely going to be the pick. So tight end to me is a primary need. Defensive line to me is clearly a need. Ozo Odighizuwa had over 50% of the defensive snaps last year. Second place among Cowboys defensive tackles was Neville Gallimore with 36%, more or less. So they need depth, but they also need to maybe upgrade the starting lineup. Sure, Jonathan Hankins is back. He's clearly the nose tackle, but you also want to have like a versatile group for different situations. And I could see Dallas going for someone like Kalijah Kancey at 26th, maybe someone like Brian Breesy, maybe someone like Massey Smith, who was mocked in the second round to the Cowboys by Matt Miller recently. That would be pretty good value. Tough to see, though. Tough to see the Cowboys drafting a defensive tackle in the first round. Not their MO. You never know what the board says, though. You never know that. But still, not what they are used to. I think we're more likely to see them pick an offensive lineman than a defensive lineman for sure, especially those interior guys. Now, secondary needs, excuse me. I'm going with linebacker. Cowboys obviously have Leighton Vander Esch. They have Damon Clark. Other than that, they need somebody else for depth. And also, I have a difficult time believing that both Clark and Vander Esch are going to play 17 games each next season. So you need people on that linebacker room. It's an interesting spot because if the Cowboys do not draft somebody, they can still do things a la 2022 when they signed Anthony Barr closer to the season. I could see them doing something similar later in the year, but also I could see them doing the following. Get that Jaron Kearse type player that we've been talking about. The Cowboys had visits for the Marvion Overshown, right? Who is a converted player from one position to the other. They are hosting Marte Mapu from Sacramento State, who is a hybrid player as well. And we know that the Cowboys, with Dan Quinn as defensive coordinator, they are willing to have these positionless players on their defense. And Jaron Kearse had this linebacker type role, but he also was a safety, but he also played some nickelback stuff. Dan Quinn will not shy away from that. That is almost like the future of football, and every time it seems like it's the present of football. I do think the Cowboys could address the linebacker need with a linebacker / safety type player, a versatile guy, if you will. I also have cornerback as a secondary need. Sure, give me Stephon Gilmore. I'm happy about that. Daron Bland, happy. Trevon Diggs, obviously happy. It is a pretty damn good starting trio of cornerbacks, but you can never, ever have too many of those guys. And Gilmore might not be a long-term play. He might be about to play his final year in the NFL. Probably, I would say so. Daron Bland, still a guy that played half a season, and obviously he showed what he can do. I wouldn't dare criticize the guy, but my point is you need more cornerbacks in that room. You need depth. Anthony Brown is essentially gone. We don't know if the Cowboys will look at the possibility of re-signing him later, but I would just add cornerback as a secondary need for any team in the NFL that doesn't have it as a primary need, if I'm being honest with you. Similar stuff for wide receiver. Sure, you have Brandon Cooks now, Michael Gallup, CeeDee Lamb, looking good, but also you're playing 11 personnel in the NFL nowadays, so you need like at least 4 or 5 guys, especially if Gallup is a guy you could move on from in the near future. Brandon Cooks, too, at the end of the day. Michael Gallup, CeeDee Lamb, obviously, you need to extend him, but you need more guys. So I would be taking a wide receiver where applicable. And finally, tertiary needs. Give me offensive tackle and edge rusher, because just like cornerback, you can't never have too many of those. Give me a running back. Not a secret for the Cowboys. They moved on from sick. Tony Pollard is the guy. I don't buy into the idea that Pollard cannot have 20 touches per game. I don't buy it. But I will say this. Pollard is coming off an injury. He is franchise tagged. We don't know. We don't really know if the Cowboys are going to extend him for the long term. And, you just never know. And I think the Cowboys need some insurance at the position, if I'm being honest with you. Mark Aaron says running back needs to move up your list. And I thought about ranking it higher. I thought about it. But also, I had to respect Tony Pollard. Like, I don't really need one as much as I think that I need a linebacker, a cornerback, and a wide receiver. But I can see the argument for that. I really can. I really can. Kicker. We'll talk more about that in a few moments. But I'm telling you, kicker is a need for Dallas. He's kind of might not be it if we're being real. And then edge rusher. The Cowboys have plenty of them, but you can't never have enough. Yeah. So I had to include it as well. You always want to be building that defensive end room every single time. Let's see what you got. Let's see what you have for me in the chat. Let's see. Blue Dab says, Mo, who are your Steelers taking the first? You know those are not my Steelers, Blue Dabs. You know that. Blue Dabs likes to bully me a little bit because of my Steeler fan girlfriend. Running back. Oh, no, I had already read that one. Let's see here. Robert Chuk says, we grab a back in the 5th round. I'm going to be honest with you. I think that running back becomes a very real possibility starting in the 3rd round. I've seen some mocks in which the Cowboys grab one in the 2nd round. Wouldn't be a total surprise, but I don't like it. Would have to be maybe like Jamar Gibbs, and I don't know if he will make it that far. And of course, obviously, also kind of assuming that Bijan Robinson is not around for the 26th pick. Because if he's there, I also have a hard time believing that the Cowboys pick him. I said that about Michael Mayer. I think that if both are on the board, the Cowboys might lean Bijan. I don't know what they're thinking exactly, but that's what my guess would be. So other than that, I think 3rd round is the first round in which the Cowboys might get close to picking a running back. And obviously, you could talk about guys like Zach Evans from Ole Miss. You can talk about Kendra Miller from TCU, who is a 30 visit. Evans is also a 30 visit. Rashawn Johnson. Rashawn Johnson was not a visit from what I know, but they did work him out. Rashawn Johnson is a Texas Longhorn, and I would put higher odds on him being a Cowboy than Bijan Robinson, maybe. I think the 3rd round, from the 3rd round on, it's going to be interesting for running backs. Oh, Zach Charbonnet could be another one from UCLA. Probably would have to get him in the 2nd, though. Let's see here. Let's see what you guys have to say in the chat. I love Texas backup. I love it since I love weed. Man, Rashawn Johnson is good. He's a good prospect. He's obviously no Bijan, but you watch those Texas Longhorns games, and Johnson has it. Like, I would be very comfortable giving him 50% of the touches at running back if you can pick him in the 3rd round. Like, let's go for it. That would be a steal in my opinion. Had to get some water. Excuse me. Let's see here. Dijon Mustard. I'm good. Where is that nickname coming from? Go get King Henry, says Vinny Lewis. Man, it would have to be very inexpensive for me to pull that trigger on that one. Honestly, I still think the Cowboys will trade back, says Mark Aaron, possibly to pick 32. If you guys have watched Primetime for a while now, you know where I stand when it comes to the trade backs. In a few words, this is where I stand. Every single blog, every single website, every single podcast of every single team in the NFL has one article, has one episode about why it is the best idea for the team to trade back. Now, this is kind of a pet peeve for me, but because obviously we understand the value in trading back. You get more capital, you get one more dart to throw at the board, and sometimes it happens, but it's less likely than it appears every time. And I kind of get frustrated because every single fan base, every single website, every single team has that take at one point. And I'm not saying it won't happen. I'm not saying I wouldn't like it. I just don't like to spend a lot of time diving into it. And I always want to share this pet peeve of mine in draft season. That being said, though, I'm not entirely sure about, trading back from 26th overall. Like, I would have to know what the compensation is, obviously, but also, man, I don't think that it would be very good. And I'm not sure that the board will be wiped out at 26th. I have a hard time believing that it will be wiped out. I have a hard time believing that I won't like one of those names when the time comes. Maybe if you're thinking like what offensive line, if you're thinking Osiris Torrance from Florida and Steve Avila from TCU, could be, I guess. Those two have dropped recently, like across the top insiders mocks. And this might be wrong, but I feel like Mel Kiper, Todd McShay, Matt Miller, Dane Brugler have dropped some of those to the second. And I wonder if that is something that they're hearing around the league. Maybe the NFL is not as high on these interior offensive linemen as we are. But you never know. You never know. So watch out for them too, obviously. Why trade back when 26 is already at the back of the draft? Says Bruce got the toxic use. And I agree. I don't think you're going to get a lot of value. I don't think it will be better than what? I had trouble believing that it will be a fourth. I think a fourth is the highest that you could get out of that transaction. So I kind of don't see that happening. David says trade up to get Hyatt or Robinson. Robinson, you would have to trade up for. Hyatt, I don't know. I don't think that Hyatt will be off the board, or at least not that it's super likely that he will be. And I'm not sure that he's a player that I would like the Cowboys to trade up for. Personally, I'm talking about personally here. If offensive tackle Broderick Jones was available at 26, Dallas should grab him. I wouldn't oppose that for a single second. I wouldn't. So I agree there for sure. Anyways, did we get through with the needs? Yeah, we did. There you go. So now let's talk about that wide receiver need that the Cowboys have. Because the Cowboys might have that need a little bit higher than we do. And I'm saying this because of their top 30 visit list. Like their list includes Jalen Hyatt from Tennessee. It includes Say Flowers from Boston College. It includes Quentin Johnson from TCU. Jonathan Mingo from Ole Miss, who is seen as a round 2 prospect rather than a first one. They also, quote unquote, visited with Jackson Smith and Jigba. And I use quotes because he wasn't technically a top 30 visit. He was a local prospect that they could host without him, counting towards that number 30. So they clearly want somebody. Robert Prince, the wide receiver coach, led the pro day for the Bolts. And obviously the Bolts have Hyatt, but they also have Cedric Tillman, who could be a round 2 prospect for the Cowboys at wideout. And it seems to me, and I touched on this last Thursday, it seems to me like the Cowboys want pass catchers for Dak Prescott. You remember that San Francisco 49ers game? I'm sorry if I said this on Thursday already. I think that I did, but I'm not entirely sure. So just in case, I will say this. After that 49ers wildcard loss 2 seasons ago, it felt like the Cowboys were just pushed around and pushed around and pushed around. And Mike McCarthy came out and he said, we want to get more physical. We want nasty players on the team. And they got Tyler Smith. They got Sam Williams. They got Jake Ferguson. They got nastier. And then fast forward 1 year later, and you're getting beaten by the 49ers once more. But this time it's not because they are bullying you at the line of scrimmage. It's because when DeMeco Ryans was able to remove CeeDee Lamb from the equation, nobody else was generating separation. And you couple that with one of the worst performances that we've seen from Dak, and it was game over. And it seems that, the trade for Brandon Cooks, they restructured Michael Gallup. They picked up, obviously, CeeDee Lamb's 5th-year option. That was an automatic decision, but still. And they're hosting all of these wide receiver guys, and people are talking about tight ends. It seems like the theme of this draft, just like last year it was nastiness, is getting pass catchers for Dak, getting Dak some help on offense. Not only that, but you're changing the offense up. You're trying to spice things up for Prescott. Mike McCarthy is going to be the architect of the offense. You're moving on from Kellen Moore, even though he had the stats to vouch for him. So it seems like the theme of this offseason, at least to me, is surround Prescott with better pass catchers and surround Prescott with a better support system. So I strongly believe that the Cowboys are targeting pass catchers in the first 2 rounds of the draft. That is my strongest take heading into Thursday. That being said, 26th overall might be tough to get that done. So I loved one question that former Cowboy scout Brian Broaddus was made on Twitter about where does he think the Cowboys are at in terms of wide receivers in round 2. How would they rank them? And he responded and he shared his, I would say you could call it a prediction. Here's how he thinks the Cowboys are stacking up their wide receivers for round 2. He was asked this by Brant Holmes, and Brian Broaddus replied, Cedric Tillman, who's from Tennessee, Marvin Mims from Oklahoma, Jonathan Mingo from Ole Miss, and finally, Rashee Rice from SMU. Now, my question from me to you in the chat is, do you agree or disagree that the Cowboys will strongly target a pass catcher? Let me know in the chat. And while you do that, let me talk to you about my takeaway from that Broaddus tweet. Because I see Tillman, I see Mims, I see Mingo, and I see Rice. And out of those 4, 3 of them have a very, very similar trait. And I would just say like their size, combining everything, right? Tillman is a big wide receiver. Mingo is also big, and Rashee Rice is also big. Marvin Mims is the exception to that rule, to that trait at least. So it's interesting to me because I think that the Cowboys are looking at those guys because of that. And maybe it's also just like the way that this wide receiver class is built, especially for round 2, because for round 1, you do have Addison, you do have Smith and Jigba, you do have Say Flowers. But talking about round 2 here, you might get those big guys. And you already have CeeDee Lamb, who can dominate from the slot, so you don't really need a small guy. I'm just saying, watch out for that in this draft. Those pass catchers, but also maybe those big pass catchers. Let's see what you have to say in the chat. Katharina goes with agree. Jonathan also agrees. Day 2 picks is Mark. Gregory goes with agrees. Mark Aaron says, I agree that we need a bigger wide receiver. Ines also agrees. Blue Dabs. Shout out to Jonathan Taylor, who's watching the show. Blue Dab says, I want Mims bad. Great kid. I feel like Marvin Mims is kind of like this high-key pet cat of the Cowboys nowadays. Like from many analysts that I've followed, a lot of people are on board with Marvin Mims in the 2nd round. David says Hyatt is the only one. Oh, no, excuse me. Hyatt is the one that they should trade up to get. Plus, I would use Turpin like the 49ers use Debo. You guys know how I feel about that one. I've touched on that several times. I think we're kind of overrating Devontae Turpin, man. I think we're being optimistic about Turpin. I just don't buy into it at all. And I'm not hating. I'm just saying Turpin has great speed. Great speed. I'm still not confident in him running a slant against a crashing safety. That's something that I don't want to see, man. Not at all. I don't think that he's like the route runner that you need in the NFL. And also, man, Deebo Samuel is freaking insane. Like, I don't think Turpin is up to be a full-time wide receiver in the NFL. Much less so kind of feel Deebo Samuel's shoes, right? Plus, Deebo is big, no? Like, how big is Deebo? Let me find out really quickly over here in the chat. Let me try to find that. in the chat in Google. Debo Samuel, like per the 49ers roster. I want to see how much he weighs per the website at least, because he's got to be bigger, bro. He's got to be bigger. Man, the 49ers website has him at 215 pounds, and obviously 6 feet tall. So he's way bigger, way bigger than Debo, than Turpin. Excuse me. I don't think it would work at all. So yeah, if we're talking about the wide receiver room, I could see the Cowboys still being super high on Turpin and kind of wanted to get him on the team, on the roster, but I don't see him being this part of the wide receiver room legitimately. Let's see what you guys have to say in the chat. 215 says Tyler Browning. Thank you, Tyler. Thank you to Tyler. And also thank you for the birthday wishes down here. Thank you, sir. And thank you for joining tomorrow night, A to Z Sports Dallas Primetime. I kind of spoiled it earlier in the show, but we're having Tyler Browning, who I believe, and Tyler, you can break the news here in the comments, but I believe he's about to publish his draft guide. I, a close colleague of Tyler, had early access to it. I think I'm kind of bragging right now, but still, we're going to get Tyler in here. We're going to get somebody smarter than me to talk about the NFL draft, and I'll kind of like throw him some fastballs, and he will just take care of slamming those home runs. It is released, so go check out Tyler on Twitter at Diabetic Tyler. You can find the draft guide there. It's open for everybody. It's got a top 100. It's got great write-ups on the players, divided by the trades that he looks at. So I think it's really worth it. Go check it out. And tune in tomorrow night to talk about the draft with Tyler. And also, I'm trying to get somebody that, I think could give us some pretty cool insight heading into the NFL draft. Because you guys know this. I like watching some tape. I like watching some of these players. I don't put in the work that the real draft guys put in. Like, I respect the heck out of it. We'll see if we can do it for 2024. I'm gonna try to get a head start, because that's always been my problem, man. I always want to get started on my draft work very late in the year. So I need to do that during the season. So 2024, watch out, because you might get my top year ever in terms of draft content. That is my promise from me to you. Oh yeah, Tyler mentions it in case that was in case it was not clear. It is free. It is free. I have The Beast by Dane Brugler. Sorry, Tyler, says Mark Aaron. Man, here's the way to go. I have Matt Waldman's draft guide. I have Dane Brugler's draft guide. I have Tyler Browning's draft guide. I have Connor Lipsey's draft guide. And I think I have one more that I'm kind of forgetting right now. So, and I listened to Nate Tice on the Athletic Football Show, and I listened to Deanna Lee. The draft is all about getting different opinions. Jeff Cavanaugh. Blue Daps says, we want Jeff Cavanaugh from 97.1 The Freak as a guest. Jeff, I'm looking right at the camera, and I'm saying this. Let's do it for Blue Daps, and let's do it for the 2 DMs that I've shot your way. Let's get it done. Let's get you on primetime, man. I've always admired Jeff, all kidding aside. In more than a sports host way. Like, and I've talked about this before on the show, but Jeff is a guy that will make decisions based on his energy and his happiness level. And that is like something that I madly respect. That's also one of the reasons why Pat McAfee is one of my biggest idols. Like, he doesn't give a single, F. He left the Colts. He left Barstool. He's now going to be a dad, and he's looking for a network to help him carry the show. I think Jeff has had some moments like that too. I mean, not comparing it directly, but still somebody that I admire. Hopefully we get Jeff in here one of these days. I would love that. Anyways, moving on a little bit here on the show, let's get into the possibility of drafting a kicker. I talked about this in a recent article for ADC Sports because Matt Miller from ESPN put together a seven round mock draft. And in the fourth round, he had the Cowboys select Jake Moody from the University of Michigan. Let's open up the chat right now and let's ask, are you for or against a kicker in the fourth round? And if you're open to a kicker but not in the fourth round, let me know, where would you start considering one? Because I'm kind of, pro drafting a kicker at this point. The simple reason why is I don't know where else you look for if you want a kicker. Because you might open up Spot Rack and look at the free agents out there. You're not going to find anybody that you are super excited about. That's the reality of things. That's why Vizcaino is your only rostered kicker at this moment. And you look at the actual NFL draft and you look at the possibility of, okay, who could I take? And speaking of Dane Brugler, he had his own draft guide out, and he has 2 kickers in the entire class that have draft grades. The rest of them are priority free agents or undrafted free agents, but he only has 2 guys with a draft round grade, and that is Jake Moody, who he has as a 4th or 5th round prospect, and then the kicker out of Maryland. I'm sorry, I forgot his name entirely. My bad. 6th or 7th round grade for Dane Brugler. In other words, if you want the guy who seems to be like a surefire bet, quote unquote, or at least the closest that you would get to that, is Jake Moody. And he made in his career 148 extra points out of 148 attempts. So 100% efficiency rate in extra points. And he made 52 of 60 attempts in his, and this is in his 2 years as a starter, excuse me, not in his career, 2 years as a starter. 52 of 60 attempts. That's an 87% efficiency rate, including 10 conversions from 40 plus yards. So he's got the power as well. He won the Lou Grosso Award in 2021, and he was a consensus All-America in 2021. In 2022, he was also a finalist for the Lou Grosso Award. So I think he's like the safest bet that you could make for a kicker. Now, here's where it gets difficult, though. Here is where it gets difficult. And I will share my screen once more here really quickly. And we're going to look at some 4th round pick history for Dallas. Some of the recent standouts that were drafted in the 4th round. Jake Ferguson is 2022. Tyler Viotish is from 2020. Tony Pollard, 2019. And these are all 4th round picks, by the way. Armstrong, Dalton Schultz. I skipped some. I'm just showing you the standouts. And if I kept going back further and further, I would get to Dak Prescott in 2016. In other words, your 4th round pick is not any day 3 pick. Right? Like you're likely losing a shot at a key contributor for your team. And the Cowboys have done a pretty damn good job in the 4th round. I am in favor. Even still, I am in favor of taking one in the 4th round just because I don't see what the other option is. You know why the Commanders sold for $6 billion recently and why every time they seem to double in value? It's not just because of cash flows. It's not just because of, net worth and all of that. It's also about that premium that they rarely come available. Supply and demand. And there is a high supply for kickers and a very low demand for kickers and a very high, very high demand, very low supply. All right, nailed it. So I would be up for it. I would be up for it. Man, this is like there's this Mexico game right now in football, and I think it's getting kind of close. And people are going crazy in my text messages. Oh no, but it's over now. My team won. Chihuahua won. It wasn't as close. 25-33. Come on. Come on. I stopped watching at 33-17, so it wasn't as close. Hit rate drops off after the fourth, says Mark. Take one in round 7, says Ines. That's the point, though. That's the point. I looked at the class, and you're not getting one. I mean, not one that makes you feel better than, say, Chris Nagar last year. Or Jonathan Garibay before that. I'm up for it. I'm up for it for sure. Even in the 4th round. Let's see what you guys have to say. There were a lot of comments earlier that I missed. Oh, Matt, here we go, says Tyler. I watched Jeffrey's show on YouTube, says, Mark, yeah, man, we need to get that. We need to get that happening. Free agent kicker Prater. Gould has also been mentioned, I think. Open 6th round, says John. In the 4th against for Robert Chuk. A lot of people are against it. A lot of people. Beast Mode also against it. 6th round, says Mark Aaron. Katharina goes with, against it. Not the 4th, says Joey Vela. Tampa drafted that Florida State kicker, and he couldn't make a kick in the NFL. Oh, yeah, that was crazy. That happened. Man. The Tampa Bay Bucs drafted Roberto Aguayo in the 2nd round, and they won a Super Bowl before the Cowboys. Like, what the heck? I get pissed every time that I remember that. Maher has to go, says John. Chihuahua, says Gregory. Yes, sir. The Chihuahua Caudillos. Maybe in the 5th, says Bruce, got the toxic use. Yeah, like if Jake Moody is there in the 5th, do you trade up to get him? Do you trade up for a kicker? I wouldn't rule that out. What's up, Blake? Thank you for joining us, too. Anyways, Robbie Gould, for real. Let's look at Robbie Gould's PFR page before we get out of here tonight, because I'm curious. Because he's a guy that I would consider for sure, just based on the name, right? But I also kind of don't know why the 49ers, out of every other team, moved on from him. Because if you're the 49ers, you're the favorite to win the NFC, probably. I don't know if it's them or the Eagles in the betting world. I think it's the 49ers. Last year, he made 27 out of 32. Long one was a 51. That's an 84% hit rate, by the way. He was 2 for 2 on 50-plus attempts. He was 7 for 11 in 40 to 49 attempts. 5 for 5, 30 to 39, and 13 for 14, 20 to 29. Extra points wise, he missed only 1 out of 51 attempts. So he seems to still has it, right? But he's 40 years old. He's 40 years old, so maybe you never know. Maybe that's why some teams no one has signed him, and I hate that logic. But maybe it becomes more relevant for kickers. I don't know if this is making any sense. It's tough to evaluate kickers, and we all know this. I'd go for Jake Moody in the 4th. Obviously, depending on who's there, but still, I would. Ladies and gentlemen, loaded show. We're pushing 50 minutes now, so we're going to get out of here. This is one of the longest shows that we've had on Primetime in a while, and I had a lot of fun. Thank you so much for tuning in. It is time to watch Succession, in my opinion, in my humble opinion. As always, remember that Primetime is brought to you by our friends over at freemanmazda.net. Check out the Ride of the Week over on their website. And check out the website too, adcsports.com/Dallas. I wrote about several of the topics that we touched on tonight, actually the 4 of them. So make sure you go check out those articles on the website. Thank you to Gilbert. Thank you to John. Thank you to everybody who tuned in tonight. Robert, Joey Vela, all of you, make sure you tune in tomorrow night because we're getting a draft expert on the show and we are having a draft primer for the Cowboys. Thank you so much, and I will see you tomorrow night. Nos vemos. Muchísimas gracias. Bye-bye.